So is Lab McConkey an under the radar player? It depends on who you ask, but according to the folks at ESPN who did ask around, Lab McConkey is a quote NFL draft sleeper, a scouts pick under the radar prospects. This is what one NFL scout who I guess covers Georgia in his area, it's an NFC scout, had to say about Lab McConkey. He said he's a top 50 player on my early list. He's tough as hell, super quick out of his breaks, and he doesn't drop passes ever. Even if they don't throw the ball a ton, that's a pro style offense, and he's asked to do NFL style things right now. He'll hit the ground running. In terms of him dropping passes ever, he did have a rough game against Kent State. I want to point that out. That's why Georgia had such a hard time in that game, particularly. But I'll tell you this: I do think sometimes he is not thought about a lot, and whether you're talking about in Athens or I guess in the NFL, some of the other people on this list are not at big name schools. Devin Leary, the quarterback who's going to transfer to Kentucky from NC State, might be an example of the opposite of what I'm just saying. But most of the people they have on this list are guys I've never heard of who are playing at smaller schools, generally speaking. But in terms of Ladd, the thing about Ladd McConkey, when you watch Georgia play, he's just such a weapon. And I don't know if people scheme against him, which maybe would be the same sort of situation he gets into in the NFL. I mean, you don't have to scheme against Ladd McConkey. It doesn't seem like it. But the problem is that he really hurts people a lot. I mean, Ladd McConkey's had a very good career at Georgia. He could have gone pro this past season. Decided to come back. That wasn't a surprise if you're over at Dawg Post because, well, anyway, that's stuff we talked about quite a bit over there. But, he, even in his worst game of a season ago, which was the Kent State game, he still wound up with 6 receptions for 65 yards. But last year for Georgia, he ran for 134 yards, including a touchdown against Oregon and one against Mississippi State, that 70-yarder, which was, half the yards, but 762 yards. He really didn't do a lot against Ohio State. So maybe that's what Georgia's like without Ladd McConkey. They still score 40 points, but they don't just run away from people. I think he's an exceptional player. He's been very good at Georgia for a long time. And he will, maybe he'll have the type of career that Hines had in the NFL with the Steelers, where he was a really, really good college player, but then he kind of blossomed in the NFL. I don't think that's out of the question at all for Ladd McConkey. This isn't the first time he's been not thought about. Hey, pick up our 2023 preview today. When you get Double Dogs are our discussion of our book, I should say, about the 2022 national championship season. There's a really nice image of Ladd in here during that Tennessee game. There it is. Somebody talking to you right now took it. So pick that up today. The link's down below. I don't know how long we're going to do this offer for, but so take advantage of it now. He's so sudden. That's the thing with Ladd McConkey. He's a very sudden player. Quick in a way that, explosive in a way that is hard to deal with and capture. That's why he's so active in Georgia's offense. I mean, the only 7 rushes, but that's another 16 punt returns. So about a punt return a game. About every other game he's going to return. He's going to run the ball. And then, but they flash that a lot with him, by the way. And then maybe about 4 or so receptions a game, and a touchdown every other game receiving. That's a lot of production. I mean, if my memory serves correct, the only person in front of him was Brock Bowers this past season. And, everybody loves Brock Bowers. They think he's a top, 15, top 20 draft pick in the NFL. Make sure you're taking advantage, too, of our offer with Doordash. You see in the background there. It's a limited time offer. You can get 50% off your first order with Doordash. I've got the link down below. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. The code is DawgPostSummer, DAWGPOST Summer. So take advantage of that, y'all. I was at Brewster's the other day, and DoorDash, you can use DoorDash for Brewster's, the ice cream company. So keep that in mind. Now, we ate it all there, but you could order it and have it at your house before the ice cream melts. So 50% off your first order, limited time and terms apply. But the code is DawgPostSummer. It's 50% off. Take advantage of it with our friends from DoorDash. Ladd McConkey's best game a season ago, as I remember, probably was the Tennessee game. That wasn't where he had the most catches, but he really hurt Tennessee with that touchdown. He hurt Oregon too. He did not have a 100-yard receiving game. And if I'm betting, I would bet that he doesn't have a 100-yard receiving game this season either. But against Tennessee, he was 5 for 94 with a touchdown. He did not have any other touches in that game. But that picture I showed you was another long play from him. He had that 37. I think it was a 37-yard touchdown. Ladd McConkey is a great example of what happens to guys at Georgia who are not, super heralded guys, but they work their way through the system. Tramel Walthour is a great example of that. Jordan Davis. I saw somewhere the other day where someone was confused and thinking Jordan Davis was a 5-star recruit. Jordan Davis was not a 5-star recruit. I can assure you Ladd McConkey was not. And this is where Kirby gets really persnickety about things. Like guys like these that they develop. Then he goes on rants sometimes about recruiting services. It cracks me up sometimes just because it's so obvious they're very good at this sometimes. I don't know why he gets jumpy about it. Actually, I will say this. Ladd's best game was Mississippi State. I don't know why I didn't say that earlier. I mean, the guy had 141 yards and 2 touchdowns against State. That is some serious production. But he was really good against Oregon too. So and against Tennessee. He was not bad against Florida. But he also had over 100 total yards against TCU. He's tough to deal with, y'all. And he probably is under the radar. Even still at Georgia as their second leading receiver from last year. In a way that like Kenny McIntosh was under the radar. That's what's so challenging about playing Georgia. Is that they if you are scheming against Brock Bowers, if you're worried about Brock Bowers, which you should be, who else are you going to get hurt by? I mean, is it going to be the game where, Edwards goes for 85 yards on the ground? Or a game where, if a receiver goes for 150 against you, you're probably in trouble. Now, not every situation is like that. I mean, if you're playing Mississippi State and somebody doesn't go for 150 against you, you've really had a good day. But, if a receiver is really thrashing you like that, you've probably given up 2 touchdowns in big play scenario too. But, all these players at Georgia, they're not all top 50 guys. And, for years, this was what comes to my head when I talk about this sometimes. Georgia's tennis program has won, I think, 7 or 8 national championships. And they've had really good number 1 players. The number 1 player on their team this year, he won the national championship in singles. But forever, what happened was the 4, 5, and 6 guys were your real problem when you were playing another team. Because not every time, you only got to get to 4 points. But not every time, those guys would sweep at the bottom. So you're only looking for one more win, whether it's in doubles or the first 3 spots. That's what you get from Georgia in terms of dealing with them offensively. Is their top 3 guys are really good. I mean, you're talking about people like Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel in those cases, I don't want them to all be running backs. And then like George Pickens or Brock Bowers, people like that, or Stetson Bennett. Those guys don't have to have really good days for Georgia to beat you. It's the people after that. It's 4, 5, and 6. It's like when Brock Bowers isn't really killing you, and Kenny McIntosh and Stetson are not having great days. That's when Lad McConkey all of a sudden comes out of nowhere, which is not the case. I mean, he never came out of nowhere. The only two games where he had fewer than 2 catches were Tech and the second game of the season against Samford, which was a shortened game. So no, and I'll add this too. Ladd was dealing with a knee thing at the end of last season that really slowed him down at the end of the season. Not that you could necessarily tell, but they were worried about him playing against Ohio State. He had a 7-yard reception, and then he had lost a yard on a reception. I remember the negative play was at the beginning of the game, if you remember it. But he was not his explosive self against, probably from the Tech game on, even though he was very good against LSU. That was a tough game for him to compete in. But it's those guys. I mean, I don't even know if it's correct to say that your second leading receiver is not number 1, 2, or 3 on your list. He probably was. But my general point is, when you're not thinking about Ladd McConkey, you're having to think about somebody else. It all goes back to they have every single ingredient they need to be successful. And let me tell you, they are. And by no short measure from Ladd McConkey.